Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Joy, starring Jennifer Lawrence, Robert De Niro, Edgar Ramirez, Diane Ladd, Virginia Madsen, Isabella Rossellini, and Bradley Cooper, directed by David O. Russell. Now, this is the first movie David O. Russell did that's rated PG 13, and it might be the hardest one I've seen, and by that PG 13 reading I'm talking about. But I remember going to theaters for this, and I walked out not remembering too much about it coming back to it this time. So let's see if it still remains a good one. Let's see. We start off with the Fox logo, and we get something that sounds like Christmas music. And what was the point of that? And we move on to an old movie clip, which is another not a great choice by David O. Russell, the director. This is inspired by the true story of how Joy, played by Jennifer Lawrence, grew up as a housewife slash inventor of a mop that'll be successful, but I couldn't tell you when this movie took place, as Joy has a best friend named Jackie, as they grew up together and support each other and grew up with a divorced family and with Lazy Terry, played by Virginia Madsen, and Rudy, played by Robert De Niro, who has a shop of his own, as over the years when Joy is all grown up, and Terry sits on her bed in front of the TV as she makes molds and plumbing issues, and Rudy is forced back to living with Joy and doesn't know why her ex-husband Tony, played by Edgar Ramirez, who's living in her basement, which is not the right way to get divorced properly. And this dialogue is badly written, which is one of the problems with the movie, and the characters are also unlikable. Like last time with American Hustle and I Heart Huckabees, as Joy had a hard enough time with her life at her job, at home, and with her sister Peggy, as she comes off kind of nasty to Joy, particularly her business. And she's a character I just despise. And I don't like any of these characters to begin with, but she's the most despisable one. As they feel like they're not good characters to be around with. The cinematography makes this movie look super ugly, as this is an ugly looking movie with the worst characters in movie history. Not in movie history, but like in a, I don't know how to explain it, with I Heart Huckabees. And this is kind of a better movie than I Heart Huckabees, in my opinion. We get a flashback with Rudy and Terry having an argument to the point that Rudy destroys Joy's papers of inventions. And did the audience need this? No, because this is kind of a long movie at 2 hours and 4 minutes. And there were some scenes that could have been edited in the editing room floor, like American Hustle, as this needed to be 10 minutes shorter than it needed to be, whereas American Hustle was 30 minutes longer. And that was a better movie than this, which makes me think so far I Heart Huckabees is the weaker movie, but we'll see how Amsterdam goes. As I'm hearing reviews as they're saying it's not very good, as I'm a little worried about it, but I'll get there next time. We get how Joy and Tony first met by a flashback, and they sing a song which makes me think their chemistry is terrible, which is a shame, as I wanted to like this and these characters more than I did, just like the scenes where we see them getting married, and Rudy makes a terrible speech and ruins the wedding, and next thing you know, Joy and Tony get into an argument and decides to sign the divorce papers. And this is completely sentimental and way too melodramatic, as I can't believe it taken any further. Tony brings red wine to a boat trip where Rudy and his girlfriend Trudy, Joy, and Peggy bring Tony aboard, and as it makes a mess of the glass, Joy mops it and gets glass on her hand and decides to invent a mop where you won't have to touch the glass in the first place, which is a good idea, but this movie executes the story in an awful way. Joy gets the plumber named Toussaint to fix the wet ground as Joy falls asleep on the stairs, which is a terrible idea to begin with, as Rudy and Tony bring her to the couch. And this movie has problems with the editing, as this is, like I said, 10 minutes too long, in my opinion. Joy kicks Tony and Rudy out of the basement and decides to invent the mop, and how she decides does work is a good invention, as she shows it to her family first, to see how the invention works. And I do like those scenes as they do work fine, but not the greatest as far as I'm concerned. While the acting in this is terrible in this movie, their buyer overcharges Joy for his mistakes, while Joy wants to put her mops in stores as she wants to sell them for $19.95. In my 1995, I mean $19.95. Excuse me for that. And suddenly, Tony and his friends come in, and so does the cops. And Tony's friends judge her as a parent, as people are so goddamn judgmental towards Joy. And it's not a good thing to make the audience feel sorry to a character that some people don't like, or myself, that people don't like myself, like I don't like her. For example, and Tony comes by and recommends a promoter to promote her mop on the TV, like Terry sees in there and on the TV as a friend of Tony's whom he used to work with, as Joy is introduced to Neil Walker, played by Bradley Cooper, and she shows it to them, and people laugh at this invention, which is very disrespectful, as these people are very rude to Joy, and Neil doesn't mean to be disrespectful towards her, and tells her what his job is, and hell, even Bradley Cooper comes off unlikable as well, unfortunately. Neil asks Joy to make 50,000 more mops for a week so they can promote it on the TV just in time for the holiday season, as during these scenes it's Christmas time when Joy promotes the mop on the TV, and we get the gun scene, which doesn't pay off that either, but that was in the trailer, but in the trailer it was done better, and here, it needs to be cut out of the movie. And we get an advertiser not doing very well as selling Joy's mop, while nobody calls because he's not doing it right. And Joy gets a call from Neil telling him he didn't do it right, while Peggy comes off very negative and despisable too. And Joy goes to a meeting with Neil and his bosses to give it a second chance, with Joy doing the advertisement on the TV, and he warns her about the lights and how people freeze when they start advertising. And these scenes are preposterous. Like, I can't believe I'm saying that in a David O. Russell film. That's not I Heart Huckabees. And it's pretty recent, which is very disappointing. Joy starts advertising the mop, and as the lights are on her, she's on camera and freezing until Jackie calls and the number and encourages her to talk about the mop and the price of it being $19.95. And she gets a lot of calls as she's demonstrating with the chocolate syrup. And when you're done with the mop, you can put it in the washing machine and it will clean itself from there. And I wish I was alive during that promotion whenever that happened. And it is a good invention to begin with, and it sells very well. And I briefly liked the scene, but at the same time, it felt very fantasy, which I never expect from a biopic. Joy's grandmother passes away, whom I didn't bring up earlier because she unfortunately didn't matter until that scene where she passes away. Otherwise, it was a wasted opportunity for the actress, whoever she was, to have a role like this, and I didn't feel sad at this point. I'm just getting bored. Meanwhile, Rudy sends Peggy because she wanted to California because she wanted to be a part of the business, and she pays with interest, and Joy is very upset and it never wants Peggy to be involved in her business ever again. And now she has to go to California, no thanks to Peggy paying. And that was a strong that is where I strongly hate Peggy as with a passion, as this character is absolutely nuts. Joy gets to Gerhardt in California, and he says she has to talk with Derek he says she has to talk with Derek from Texas, and he says she has to pay the interest, and she says she won't do so, and she goes in the restroom and sneaks into the back of the factory as she learns they stole her invention, and she tries to take it back, but the cops come in to defend Gerhardt's dumbass and puts Joy in jail and gets the family involved, and Joy unfortunately has no choice but to declare bankrupt, and I'm really so damn bored. And Peggy is to blame for all this crap to happen, and it's just business, which is full of crap in life and in this movie. Joy cuts her hair and leaves for Texas behind the family's back, to visit Derek to negotiate the billing of her product, and at the end of it, she made a phone call with Mr. Christopher from Hong Kong, who doesn't seem to know that they have a case, except that they do have a case of fraud, and Derek decides to give Joy $50,000 on top of 50 plus interest, and she gets all her molds back and makes Derek sign the contract. And we pick up years later Joy as an older woman owning a house and takes a meeting with the family from Memphis to give Joy their invention into getting her cat hair off their clothes. And Neil says to her Barry is coming after her and wants her to come with him. And the climax was boring and very, very irritating. And at the end of the day, I feel like she will be in a lose-lose situation, which feels awful. And I felt it walking away from this movie. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 3.8 out of 10. This is an ugly looking movie with the dialogue that is so upsetting to the point I don't like any of these characters, and I don't like being around them at all. But this is better than I Heart Huckabees, and the chemistry between characters are absolutely terrible. The movie has editing problems, and the way it's shot looked horrible. But I do like the scenes where she invents the mop. Some of the choices director David O. Russell makes were at times questionable, which is not a good thing. The acting is absolutely terrible in this movie, and I don't expect terrible from acting by Jennifer Lawrence. And as it is inspired by a true story, which is unfortunately not a very good story. So unfortunately, this is a solid non-recommendation, as I wanted to like this movie better than what I did, which is a shame. I'm sorry. I can't do it. So I would like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time we'll be back with Amsterdam, the final movie in this series, or director's biopic. And until then, be joyous.